Go for it.
Okay, tell us as much as you can and what you're excited about for your character in this new show.
I play Dr. Sabine Lommers, who I've nicknamed the Bad News Barbie. She's the highest-ranking federal official who comes in at the top level when it's become clear that this cannot be contained by usual civilian means. She's someone who's so high-ranking that normally her position in reality should be personally appointed by the President of the United States. She comes from a medical background, and when she comes in with she's very no-nonsense. She's got a very interesting edge to her, and yet what's exciting for me as an artist is that it's very clear that she has some exciting layers to explore. This is a relationship drama, and what's fascinating about it is that this could all really happen. So we were consulting with members of the CDC, epidemiologists, members of the Atlanta Police Department when we were creating the pilot and getting ready in pre-production. And they said, this could all absolutely happen. This is a virus. It's entirely realistic, this scenario. And, we've seen measures like this taken in Sierra Leone with Ebola. It's based on a format from a Belgian show, but it's become a very localized, very American drama where we set up characters in partnerships and then tragically see them torn apart by the cordon sanitaire that my character has to unfortunately institute. And it's a really interesting story for the audience because it takes us inward to think about what we would actually do, because it's so realistic, because it's not a zombie apocalypse story, which I love, don't get me wrong. The thing about this is it's becomes so personalized because we don't know what we would do in these situations, and it's brought so close to home by setting it in Atlanta. It's no coincidence that it's the home of the CDC as well. It really starts to make you think about who you would be, and you really have no idea until you're in those situations.
Do you think that because America is such an individualistic society versus more communal or socialist, that by putting up that wall, that it's different here than it would be if it was in another country, if it was in Europe or somewhere else?
It's a great question. I think that's something that we'll definitely explore, and I've deliberately stayed away from watching. I mean, I watched a few episodes of the original series, which is set in Europe. It's set in Belgium, and they've got an entirely different socio-political infrastructure there in their culture. How Americans respond, how military is used in each situation. It's very interesting to see how it plays out, and I think that because it is so sort of individualized here in America, we get to see the downsides of that and explore that and what happens to human nature and how communities are formed and what happens to intimacy. And so this really is, at its core, thank goodness for me, a love story. And you get to see people connect. You see, key people in relationships who then get torn apart. And you're rooting for them to find their way back to each other. And in the meantime, they're going to forge alliances with people that they wouldn't otherwise trust or be placed with in such close quarters. And I think, I've done a lot of research on trauma and stress and how it affects people and the psychology of it, and I'm fascinated by what happens to us when we're put into fight or flight. So there are the people who are trained. I've trained with Navy SEALs. I've talked to some really interesting people, and they, there's a certain part of you that almost needs to be broken to be rebuilt to handle these high-risk, dangerous situations. And yet there are a lot of civilians in this story who are going to become, I think, quite unlikely heroes.
People are used to seeing you in a very active, kick-ass kind of role, and this sounds like it's going to be a little different. You're going to be, it still sounds like you're going to be kick-ass, but in a more cerebral or political or that kind of way. What is that like for you, and what's the challenge?
Yeah, it's a good question. When you end up in a suit and heels, you certainly people may think that the power is coming from the the neck up. But she's, I think when Sabine enters a room, and this is what we talked about in terms of her presence, I have no problem bringing that sort of steely, cold edge to a character because there's so much to explore once you start applying a bit of heat to the situation and to them and their circumstances. But when she walks into a room, I mean, there's a certain presence about a person who's in that sort of position in a hierarchy, in a hierarchical structure. They have energetically such a presence about them and such an ability to take control, which is fun to play because I hope we start to see her unravel. Physically, I don't know what situation she's going to be placed in. I honestly have no idea, and our imaginations are going crazy. We've only just met our show-running team, our writing team. So there's a lot to explore, but the thing that they keep sort of really focusing on is the fact that this is a relationship drama, and that's the juice for me. Just really starting to let those characters interact and develop and blossom. And for me personally as a performer, because I'm now so used to being in my body, I get my kicks in other ways with doing trapeze work now and all sorts of nonsense. So yeah, why not?
She uses information kind of as a manipulative tool because she knows what's going on. So even though she's a doctor, she is very political to try to get things done.
Right.
What other tools does she have that she utilizes?
This is our last question. She is in a position where she is. It's unfortunate for her. She's uncomfortable about the information she has to manage, but she understands that it's necessary. And one of the things that they talked about, the experts at the CDC, was contact tracing is the most important element of keeping these viral outbreaks under control. So she's the one at the helm of, at the same time, containing the information that's going out because of the hysteria which will destroy not only the city but potentially the human race without a hint of exaggeration. But she also has to keep the physical environment contained as well. So she's dealing with the emotions, the psychology of it, and the information. She's very specific about whom she shares it with because she knows it's make or break. So the stakes are so high for her that if she trusts a particular individual in the police force, as she does David Jesse's character, she's being very specific and discerning about whom she will share that information with. And I don't think she appreciates. I think she's, working in a man's world. She understands that power comes from knowledge and information, and in the pilot, we see her having to use that information very carefully to get what she needs for the greater good.